They say a man's legacy isn't what he leaves behind, but who he raises. For me, that legacy is my granddaughter, Emily. I raised her after her mother, my only daughter, passed, and every bit of joy in my old bones comes from watching her grow into the headstrong, dazzling woman she is today. I thought I'd seen everything life could throw my way. But nothing, not 30 years as a high school principal in a tough Cleveland suburb, not the loss of my beloved Helen, not even my 3 heart surgeries, prepared me for the shock I got that blustery October evening. It started, as these things often do, quietly. I was in my favorite recliner, the one Helen made me buy despite the color, sipping coffee and reading the St. Paul Gazette. The days grow short here in Minnesota, and the fireplace crackled for warmth more than show. Emily stood across the room, nervously toying with a glinting ring on her finger. Diamond, tasteful but big enough to impress. She wore her navy blue suit, hair tucked back the way she always did for job interviews or serious discussions. I knew something was coming. "Grandpa, I'm getting married," she said, voice soft but shaking with excitement and something else, maybe fear. The paper slid from my hands and fluttered to the floor. "To who?" I managed, trying to keep my tone even. I didn't even know she was seeing anyone. She bit her lip. "To Alex. Alex Carter. He's wonderful, Grandpa. He makes me so happy." Alex Carter. Never heard the name. I'd kept tabs on most of her college friends and coworkers, but this one slipped past me. "And how long have you known this Alex?" I asked. She hesitated, twisting the ring. 3 weeks. I sat up a little straighter, my heart starting to pound in a way that had nothing to do with cholesterol. 3 weeks, Sam? People don't marry someone after 3 weeks. That's not how it works. She bristled a little, standing her ground. You analyze everything. I know you care. But this is real, Grandpa. We just clicked. I bit back the dozen arguments that wanted to tumble out, about trust, about knowing someone's family, about what it means to love and lose and stay anyway. Instead, I asked, "So when do I get to meet this miracle man?" She looked relieved, though her hands still shook. "He'd like to meet you too. Dinner tomorrow? Somewhere nice." Alex suggested the Birch Room, said it was his favorite. Of course he did. The Birch Room was the new high-end place in downtown St. Paul. Only guys with something to prove, or something to hide, picked a spot like that for a first meeting. I nodded. All right. Tomorrow it is. As she left, her heels tapping out a nervous staccato on the hardwood, I found myself staring at the old family photos above the fireplace. Emily at 6, missing her front teeth. At 12, winning the science fair. At 20, her graduation. She'd always made her own choices, often stubborn, always bright. But this was different. 3 weeks. A ring. A stranger. That night, I didn't sleep much. I called up my old friend Walt, who still played poker with half the city council. "Walt, you ever heard of an Alex Carter? Young, flashy, likes the Birch Room?" Walt chuckled. "That place? Only tech money and troublemakers go there. You worried?" I sighed. "Of course I'm worried. But it's not my life. It's hers." "Be yourself, Joe," Walt said. "But keep your eyes open." The next day, I dressed in my Sunday best, old habits die hard, and arrived early. The Birch Room buzzed with business folks, young couples, the scent of pine and something expensive on the grill. I waited by the window, watching the first snowflakes swirl under the streetlight. At 7:15, Emily walked in, arm in arm with Alex Carter. He looked just as I'd pictured, sharp suit, hair perfectly in place, too confident by half. His handshake was firm, but there was a calculation in his eyes, like he was running numbers on me from the moment we sat down. He launched into his story, how he worked for some big, innovative software startup out of Minneapolis, how he just closed a deal with investors from California, how he and Emily had met at a tech conference. He talked fast, dropped names, and barely let Emily get a word in. When I asked about his family, he gave the broadest answers: parents in Edina, dad retired from law enforcement, mom did volunteer work. No details. Nothing I could check. When he learned I was a retired school principal, he grinned and said, I guess you're used to dealing with stubborn kids. His tone was light, but the jab was clear. To him, I was just another old man, Emily's old man, a relic. But I'd learned a thing or two in my time. I let him talk, let him try to impress me with his expensive wine order, let him show off. The more he tried, the more I saw through him. He wasn't just arrogant. He was hiding something. As the night wound down, Emily excused herself to the restroom. Alex leaned in. Look, Mr. Morgan, he said. He hadn't even bothered to remember my last name correctly. I get that you're protective. But Emily's her own person now. I'll take care of her. That's all you need to know. The words stung, but I kept my poker face. Funny thing, Alex. Taking care of someone isn't just about money or confidence. It's about honesty. He smirked. Well, honesty's overrated, don't you think? Sometimes you have to bend the truth to get ahead. That's when I knew this was no ordinary fiancé. And tomorrow, when I met his family at their fancy house in Edina, I'd be ready for anything. I didn't sleep much that night. Old instincts kicked in, the same ones that woke me up at 3 a.m. when something was wrong at school, or when Helen coughed in her sleep that last winter. I kept replaying Alex's words, his smug grin, the way he'd called me Mr. Morgan. My name was Joseph Miller. He hadn't even bothered to check. Maybe he thought names were just details you could skip if you talked fast enough. Morning came gray and cold, the first serious snow sticking to the pines outside my window. I stood for a long while at Helen's old dresser, looking at her photo, her gentle eyes, her steady smile. What would you do? I asked, knowing she'd probably tell me to keep my heart open but my eyes sharp. By afternoon, Emily called to confirm dinner at Alex's parents' place. His folks are eager to meet you, she said. They're having a few other guests, too. It'll be fun. Fun. That word carried so much hope, so much trust. I promised her I'd be there with bells on, hung up, and immediately called Walt again. Got a weird feeling, I said. You want me to do a little digging? Walt replied. Old habits die hard, Joe. If you can. Just tell me if I need to worry about this Alex Carter. The drive out to Edina took nearly an hour. As I pulled up to the Carter's house, a glass sandstone mansion at the end of a cul-de-sac, I was struck by how new everything felt. No snow-shoveled footprints, no toys on the porch, not a hint of mess. Even the porch light glowed a perfect white. This wasn't a home, it was a statement. Alex met me at the door, grinning wider than ever. Glad you made it, Joe, he said, using my first name this time, as if we were suddenly friends. Inside I met his mother, Linda Carter, gracious but reserved, every hair in place, her handshake light as a feather. His father, William Carter, was smaller than I'd imagined, his gaze sharp behind rimless glasses, with a cop's posture and a businessman's handshake. As we walked to the dining room, William Carter studied me the way I used to study students caught breaking the rules. So, you're Emily's grandfather, he said, voice low. Retired principal? That's right, I replied. Most of my life in education. He nodded, but didn't smile. Tough job these days. You must have seen your share of trouble. I met his eyes, letting him see I wasn't one to back down. Plenty. But I learned a lot about people, too. Dinner was a blur of small talk. Linda complimented Emily's dress, Alex talked up his recent trip to the West Coast, and William kept steering the conversation to change and moving forward. Emily, sweet as ever, tried to bridge the distance, but even she felt the tension. The Carter's house was beautiful but cold. Abstract art hung on the walls, and the table settings looked like they'd never been used. Midway through dinner, another guest arrived, a tall man in a tailored suit, salt and pepper hair, carrying himself with the easy confidence of someone used to being obeyed. Alex greeted him with too much enthusiasm. "Uncle Derek, this is Emily's grandpa, Joe." Uncle Derek smiled, but there was calculation in it. "Good to meet you, sir. I hear you're a legend in Minnesota education." "Just did my job," I said, wary of flattery. He laughed. "Still, not everyone makes it out of the system with their principles intact." I watched the way William and Derek exchanged looks. There was history there, something unspoken, and for a moment, Alex seemed almost nervous. Dessert came, pecan pie and coffee, all served on china that looked like it belonged in a museum. That's when William Carter leaned over, voice low. "So, Joe, what do you think of Alex? He's quite the catch, don't you think?" "I think he's ambitious," I replied carefully, "but I haven't known him long enough to judge." William's eyes narrowed, and for a second, the polite facade cracked. "He knows how to get what he wants. Always has. That's a good trait in this world." Something about the way he said it made the hairs on my neck stand up. Emily tried to change the subject, but Alex cut in. "You know, Grandpa Joe, times have changed since you ran a school. Young people today have to hustle, take risks, move fast." "Sometimes," I replied, "moving too fast gets you in trouble." He laughed, but it was forced. "Don't worry about me. I always land on my feet." There it was again, arrogance with an edge. I saw William shoot him a warning look, but Alex ignored it. After coffee, Linda asked Emily to help her in the kitchen. Alex disappeared for a phone call, and I found myself alone with William and Derek. The room felt suddenly smaller, colder. William sipped his coffee. "I'll be honest with you, Joe. Alex is driven. He's made mistakes, sure, but he's loyal to family." I studied his face. "What kind of mistakes?" Derek cut in, smooth as silk. "Nothing criminal, if that's what you're asking. Just the usual stumbles. Everyone has them." I nodded, but inside my stomach churned. These men were used to covering things up, to controlling the story. But I'd made a career out of uncovering truth. Before I left, William shook my hand with a grip that was almost a challenge. "You're welcome here any time, Joe. Family's family." On the drive home, my phone buzzed. A text from Walt. "Call me. Found something on Alex. We need to talk." Walt never called after 9 unless it was important, so when my phone lit up at 10:45 p.m., I was already on edge. I answered before the second ring. "Joe." Walt's voice was tight. "You sitting down?" "I'm old, Walt. I'm always sitting down." I tried to joke, but my heart was thudding in my chest. He didn't laugh. "I pulled some strings and ran Alex Carter's name through a few contacts. You're not gonna like this." A cold, familiar dread settled over me. "Tell me." Walt hesitated, the way you do when the truth will wound. "He's got a record. Nothing that stuck, but enough red flags to make a Chicago traffic light jealous. Credit card fraud investigation back in college, charges dropped, but the files are sealed. His last job in San Francisco? Quiet firing after someone's laptop went missing. And the startup he bragged about? Registered for 6 months, closed for non-payment of taxes last year." My mind reeled. Emily had always been trusting, always saw the good before the bad. "Did you tell her?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No. That's your call," Walt said gently. "But Joe, this guy's family has connections. You need to be careful." I hung up and spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to tell Emily. Part of me wanted to charge over there right now, shake her awake, and make her see sense. But I'd learned, through many mistakes, that when you push too hard, you risk breaking something forever. The next morning, I tried to keep things normal. Made oatmeal, read the paper, tried the crossword. But every headline blurred into the same anxious question: how do you protect someone who won't let you? Emily stopped by around noon, cheeks pink from the cold, carrying a bag of pastries from her favorite bakery. "Grandpa, you're up early," she teased, not knowing I hadn't slept at all. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I taught her to tie her shoes, to balance a checkbook, to say no to boys who didn't treat her right. Now here she was, grown and in love, and I was about to shatter her happiness. "I need to talk to you about Alex," I started gently, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Her face clouded instantly, lips pressing into a thin line. "If you're going to tell me he's not good enough." I raised a hand. Just listen. I'm not trying to control you. I just want you to know what I found out. Because you deserve the truth." She hesitated, then nodded, arms folded tight. I told her what Walt had found. The sealed investigation, the shady job history, the failed startup. I watched the hope drain out of her eyes, saw the old battle between her head and her heart play across her face. "He explained all that," she said quietly after a long silence. "He said his ex-girlfriend tried to frame him for stealing her credit card. And the job, they just didn't like him. The startup failed, but at least he tried. Grandpa, everyone's got a past." "True," I said, "but good men are honest about it. They don't hide behind stories or hope nobody digs deeper." She stared at her mug. "You never trust anyone, Grandpa. You never let your guard down." She was right in a way. Maybe I'd built my life around rules and vigilance. Maybe I'd taught her to be careful, and now I was watching it backfire. "Emily, all I want is for you to be safe," I said, voice softening. "You don't have to marry a saint. But you do have to marry someone who tells you the whole truth." She looked up, tears brimming but unshed. "I love him, Grandpa." I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. "I know, sweetheart. But love isn't blind. Love sees the truth and chooses wisely." We sat in silence, the old house creaking with the wind outside. She squeezed my hand once, then stood up. "I need to think," she whispered, grabbing her coat and letting the screen door slam softly behind her. I watched her car disappear down the street, feeling more helpless than I had since Helen died. Some lessons you just couldn't teach, no matter how hard you tried. That night, I called Walt again. "Did you ever think," I asked, "that being a grandparent would be this hard?" He chuckled ruefully. "It never gets easier, Joe. But remember, Emily's tough. You raised her right." I wanted to believe that. But as the snow piled up against the windows, I couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was coming. The next day, the phone rang. Emily's number. I answered, heart pounding. "Grandpa," she said quietly, "Alex wants us to have dinner tonight, with his parents again. He said his father wants to talk." My mind raced. "Did you tell him about what I found?" She paused. "No. I want to hear what he says first." "All right," I said, trying to steady my voice. "I'll be there." As I hung up, my gut twisted with dread. I had the feeling that dinner wouldn't end quietly. Some truths have to be faced head-on, and I had a feeling we were about to hit one at full speed. By the time I pulled up to the Carter's house that evening, a damp sleet had started to fall, turning the roads slick and the air sharp with the smell of melting ice. The Carter street was silent, expensive SUVs glistening in driveways, porch lights casting a golden haze across the manicured lawns. I sat in the car for a moment, collecting myself, remembering Helen's advice. "You catch more truth with patience than with anger." Emily met me at the door, her face pale but determined. She squeezed my hand, a silent thank you for showing up despite everything. Alex stood behind her, perfectly composed, his smile polite but tight. "Glad you could make it, Joe," he said. I nodded, my words lost somewhere between suspicion and fatigue. Inside, the Carters' home was as immaculate as before, minimalist art, chrome fixtures, not a photograph in sight. William Carter greeted me with a handshake and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Joe, thanks for coming. We have a lot to discuss." His wife, Linda, offered a lukewarm greeting, already retreating to the kitchen to check on dinner. I followed the men into the den, a room filled with leather chairs and books that looked like they'd never been opened. Emily and Alex trailed in behind me, and Uncle Derek Forrester, as I'd learned, appeared again, this time with a manila folder tucked under his arm. William gestured for everyone to sit. I chose the chair nearest the door. Old habits. "Joe," William began, his tone serious, "let's put all our cards on the table. You've been asking questions about Alex. That's your right as Emily's grandfather. I do the same from my family." Alex shifted in his seat, glancing anxiously at his father, who continued, "But we need to be clear about intentions here. My son may not be perfect, he's had his share of mistakes, as all young men do, but he's trying to build a future with your granddaughter. We want you to be part of that future, but we need to move forward, not dwell on old shadows." I studied his face, reading the subtle tension, the way his jaw worked as he spoke. Derek cleared his throat. "We know about the background check, Joe. And about the calls to your friend Walt." Alex looked away, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. Emily stared at the floor. I didn't flinch. "A man's got a right to know who's joining his family. You all know that." William nodded. "Of course. Which is why we want to clear up any confusion tonight." He nodded at Derek, who opened the folder and laid out a stack of documents on the coffee table. Derek spoke, his lawyer's voice calm. "There's no sealed conviction. The investigation in college? Alex's ex-girlfriend, as Emily said, tried to frame him after a nasty breakup. The university cleared him, but the file stayed confidential to protect both parties." He slid over a letter from the school, stamped and official. "As for the laptop," Derek continued, "that was a misunderstanding. Alex was accused because he signed for equipment as project manager. The real thief was caught 2 weeks later. The company issued a quiet apology, but didn't want a scandal. That's why his record's clean." I read the documents, feeling the knots in my chest loosen a little, but not all the way. "And the startup?" Alex finally spoke. "It failed. I took a risk, and it didn't work out. I could have told Emily more, but I was embarrassed." For a moment, the room was quiet except for the wind rattling against the window. Emily looked at me, her eyes searching for some sign of hope or acceptance. I nodded. "I appreciate the honesty tonight. I'm not trying to make trouble. I just needed to know that Emily's safe." William leaned back, the tension easing from his posture. "That's all any of us want. Family is complicated, but if we're honest, we can get through anything." Linda called us in for dinner then, and we moved to the dining room. The conversation shifted to safer topics: sports, weather, memories of holidays past. It was almost normal, almost warm, except for the sense that something still waited, just beneath the surface, unresolved. Halfway through dessert, William turned to me, his voice softer. "Joe, I lost my own father young. Never got to ask him the questions I needed to. I hope you'll stick around, even after the wedding." I saw, for the first time, a flicker of real humility. Maybe he built all this armor because he'd lost too much before. I nodded. "Emily is all I have left. I just want her to be happy." Later, as I said my goodbyes in the entryway, Alex shook my hand. "I know I have a lot to prove, sir. I hope I get the chance." I left with a heavy heart, relieved that some shadows had been chased away, but still wary. I trusted my gut, and my gut told me the story wasn't finished yet. In families like the Carters, and even my own, the past had a way of circling back when you least expected. As I drove home, snow turning to rain, I found myself praying, not just for Emily, but for wisdom and patience. Because something told me that, soon enough, we'd all need both. The days after that dinner blurred into a restless fog. Emily called a few times, always cheerful, always eager to convince me she was happy. I tried to match her optimism. But a father, or a grandfather, knows when someone's putting on a brave face. She talked about wedding venues, her new job, Alex's plans for the future. All the right things. But sometimes I caught her pausing just a little too long before answering, or laughing a beat too late. Walt checked in too. "So, did you get your answers?" he asked. "Some of them," I replied. "But something still feels off. I just can't put my finger on it." "That's your gut, Joe. Never ignore it. But sometimes you have to let them make their own mistakes." Hardest advice in the world. A week passed. The weather turned colder, nights dipping into single digits, lakes beginning to freeze over. I busied myself fixing a stubborn leak in the basement, and watching college basketball on TV. But Emily's happiness, or the lack of it, hung over everything like a gray Minnesota sky. Then, one Thursday evening, the phone rang. Emily. Her voice was thin, tremulous. "Grandpa, can I come over?" "Anytime, sweetheart. You know that." She showed up 20 minutes later, bundled in her old pea coat, hair damp from the sleet. She set her bag down and paced the kitchen, arms wrapped tight around herself. I poured us both some tea and waited her out. "I don't know what to do," she finally whispered. "Alex has been different. Moody. He's barely home, says it's work, but he doesn't answer my calls. I found a strange number on his phone last night. When I asked, he got angry." My heart dropped. "Did he hurt you?" "No," she said quickly. "Nothing like that. He just shut down. Like a wall. And then he said I was smothering him." "Grandpa, do you think I'm making a mistake?" I wanted to say yes. Every part of me wanted to shout it. But I remembered Helen's voice in my mind: don't give advice until you're asked for it. Don't push her away. So I just squeezed her hand. "Do you feel safe, Em? That's all I care about." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't know what to feel. I thought he was the one, but now everything feels wrong. Sometimes love is a fog. You can't see the trouble until you're right in the middle of it." We talked for hours. I listened more than I spoke. She told me about their arguments, Alex's defensiveness, how his parents always seemed to take his side, even when he was cruel. "His dad told me I should be more patient. His mom says boys are just under pressure these days." I felt anger simmer in my chest. I'd heard that excuse 1,000 times in my old office: boys will be boys. No, I thought. Boys become men by learning responsibility. Finally, Emily sighed. "I think I need some space. I might stay here a few days if that's okay." "You never have to ask," I said. "This house is yours as long as I'm here." That night she curled up on the old sofa in the den, wrapped in Helen's favorite quilt. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the dark outside, listening to the wind rattle the window panes. I wished, for the 100th time, that Helen were still here. She'd always known what to say. The next day, Alex called. I answered. "Where's Emily?" His voice was sharp, demanding. "She's here. Taking a little break." A long silence. "Is she coming back?" "I don't know, Alex. She needs time. Give her that, at least." He hung up without saying goodbye. Emily spent the weekend helping me around the house, making pancakes, sorting old photographs, sitting quietly on the porch swing even when the cold turned her cheeks pink. She cried sometimes, but she also smiled, real and honest, in a way I hadn't seen in months. Monday morning, she got a text from Alex. "I'm sorry. Let's talk." She stared at the screen a long time. "Should I go?" she asked me. I shook my head. "Don't go because you're afraid, or because you feel guilty. Go only if you want to find out if there's anything worth saving." She nodded, squared her shoulders, and drove off. I watched her taillights disappear, praying she'd have the strength to do what was right for her, not anyone else. Late that night she returned. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "It's over," she said quietly. "He begged, he blamed, he cried. But I could see it in his eyes, he doesn't respect me." He never did. I held her, feeling her sobs shake us both. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. "You deserve someone who sees you, all of you, and chooses you, every day." She laughed, a wet, grateful sound. "Thank you, Grandpa, for everything." And as I sat with her in the silence, I realized that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones we learn ourselves, and that, finally, my girl was ready to start her life on her own terms. But as winter deepened outside, I had a feeling this wasn't quite the end. Because when a man like William Carter feels his family's reputation is at stake, there's always another storm on the horizon. Winter pressed in, sharp and heavy. Emily slowly found her old self again. She signed up for yoga classes, volunteered at the community library, called her friends for long, healing walks through the frozen city parks. Still, every so often I'd catch her staring into her mug or walking to the mailbox just a little too fast, as if she half expected Alex to show up. But Alex didn't come. Instead, trouble arrived by mail. One afternoon, as sleet rattled the windows, I found a thick white envelope on my porch. No return address, just my name in blocky handwriting. I opened it at the kitchen table, and my heart sank as I flipped through the pages. Legal threats, all signed by Derek Forrester, Alex's uncle, the Carter family attorney. "Dear Mr. Miller, this letter serves as notice that you have intentionally interfered with the engagement of Alexander Carter and Emily Miller, resulting in substantial emotional and reputational harm to the Carter family." It went on for 4 pages, full of legalese and veiled threats about damages, harassment, and public defamation. I recognized most of the tricks: pressure, intimidation, hoping I'd back down or call Emily and beg her to make amends. I called Walt immediately. He whistled when he heard the story. "You need me to get you a lawyer?" "Not yet," I said. "But I'll need a witness." He showed up the next morning with donuts and a thermos of coffee, just like we used to do before school meetings back in the day. We read the letter together, and by the time we'd finished, Walt's jaw was tight. "They're bluffing, Joe. But they're counting on you being scared." "I'm not," I said quietly. "But I want to make sure Emily isn't either." I showed her the letter that night. She read it in silence, then handed it back. "He's trying to scare us into silence," she said, voice stronger than I'd hoped. "He wants me to feel guilty. He wants you to regret protecting me." "You don't, do you?" I asked, suddenly afraid. She shook her head. "No. For the first time in months, I feel safe. I feel like myself again." We agreed on a plan: no responding, no contact, just documenting everything. Walt would call a lawyer he trusted, just in case. Emily blocked Alex's number, deleted all his messages, and even changed her route to work for a few weeks, just to be sure. I double-checked the locks every night, watched for strange cars, and made sure my old hunting bat was by the door. Not that I thought I'd need it, but it made me feel better. But the Carters weren't done. A week later, William Carter showed up at my house. No call, no warning, just a black Cadillac in the driveway and a sharp rap at the door. I opened it to find him standing there, polished as ever, his expression a careful blend of sorrow and fury. "May I come in?" he asked. I considered slamming the door in his face. Instead, I stepped aside, because that's what Helen would have done. He stepped into my living room, eyes roaming over the family photos, the mismatched chairs, the faded rug Helen loved. He sat on the edge of the couch, looking out the window at the gathering dusk. "I'm here because my son is heartbroken," he said. "Because my wife is in tears every night, and my family name is being whispered about all over Edina. I came to ask, no, to beg, you to let Emily reconsider. To help us heal this rift." His voice was almost convincing. But I saw past it, the politician's polish, the lawyer's pleading. I'd dealt with 1,000 men like him, men who'd never heard the word no, until it shattered against them. "Mr. Carter," I said, sitting across from him, "Emily made her decision. She's not coming back. You can't bully her into loving someone who lied to her, and you can't scare me with lawsuits." He stiffened. "You think you know everything, don't you? You think you're protecting her, but all you've done is destroy my family's peace." I shook my head. "No. Alex did that all by himself. If you want peace, start by asking your son to take responsibility for his choices." He glared at me. For a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw the exhaustion and fear underneath. "You're a stubborn man," he muttered. "Runs in the family," I replied. He stood gathering his coat, preparing another argument, but then he paused. "You know, I lost my father too. When I was your daughter's age. I always wanted a protector, someone to tell me when I was wrong." I softened, just a little. "I hope you find peace, Mr. Carter. But not at my granddaughter's expense." He left without another word. As his car pulled away, I finally felt the old house relax around me, like it had been holding its breath the whole time. Emily watched from the hallway, shoulders shaking a little. I hugged her tight. "Sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to heal," I said. "And sometimes it's the hardest thing to do." That night, we ate pancakes for dinner, watched an old movie, and laughed at the silly parts, just like we used to. I knew we weren't done with the Carters, not really. But I also knew that no lawyer, no threat, no angry father could break the bond between me and my girl. Whatever storm was coming, we'd weather it together. Spring came slow and careful that year, like the world itself was afraid to thaw too quickly after such a bitter season. For the first time in months, sunlight spilled into my living room, and I found myself airing out the old house, cleaning windows, and watching Emily linger longer on the porch swing, her phone finally silent. The Carters did not come back, not to our door anyway. A lawyer's form letter arrived one day, acknowledging that no further action will be pursued. I saved it in a folder marked "Peace at Last," right beside Helen's recipes and the dogged cards Emily made for me every Father's Day. Emily started to smile with her eyes again, not just her lips. She met new friends, threw herself into her work, and sometimes on Saturdays, we'd take drives out to the lakeshore or walk through town with the easy comfort of people who'd survived a storm together. One evening, after we'd grilled burgers in the backyard, Emily poured us both lemonade and sat beside me in the twilight. She looked older than she had a year ago, but stronger too, a steel in her spine I recognized as my own. "Grandpa," she said, "do you think I'll ever fall in love again? Real love, the kind that lasts?" I set my glass down and considered. "Emily, love isn't lightning. It doesn't always hit you out of nowhere and sweep you off your feet. Sometimes it's slow, patient. Sometimes it's the friend who listens, the colleague who makes you laugh, the person who stands by you when you're not at your best." She smiled, a sad sort of smile. "I thought Alex was the one. Now it all feels like a bad dream." "It wasn't a dream," I said gently. "It was a lesson. You learned your own worth. You learned that respect matters more than promises. And you learned, maybe, that you're braver than you thought." She leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she did when she was 10. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Grandpa. Even when I didn't want to hear it." I squeezed her hand. That's what family does. We stay, even when things get hard. There were still difficult days, moments when Emily got letters from Alex, or texts from old friends who just wanted to check in. Sometimes I'd find her standing by the window, lost in thought. But those moments grew fewer and further between. She began to talk about grad school, about traveling west, maybe even moving to Seattle for a fresh start. I encouraged her, even when my own heart ached at the thought of her leaving. Because I knew now what Helen had always known: real love means letting go, trusting that the people you raised will fly, not fall. One Sunday, we attended church together. Folks who'd heard all the gossip came over after the service, some with awkward apologies, some with quiet nods of respect. Even Walt stopped by with a box of donuts, announcing that the weather finally broke, so I figured you two would want a treat. In late April, Emily received an acceptance letter from a university out west. She danced around the kitchen, waving the envelope, laughter echoing off the walls. I watched her, proud and bittersweet, remembering the little girl who once asked if dreams had a weight, and how I'd told her, "Only if you don't chase them." As we packed her bags in June, she hugged me tight. "I'm going to miss you, Grandpa." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Just promise you'll call. And if you ever need me, I'll be on the next plane." She laughed, brushing away tears. "Deal." The morning she left, I stood on the porch, watching her car turn out of the driveway. The house was quieter, emptier, but I wasn't lonely. I was filled with something better: the calm after the storm, the knowledge that I'd done right by the person who mattered most. I sat down in my old chair by the window, opened the Gazette, and let the light fill the room. Because that's what grandfathers do. We stand guard, we weather storms, and when the time comes, we let go with love and pride. And somewhere out there, I hoped, a good man would one day earn her trust, not with words or promises, but by showing up, day after day, the way family always is.